Welcome to the Bandwidth Tapes. I'm Brad Williams. Today's episode features an artist whose music blurs the line between jazz tradition and modern innovation, the incredible Niia. Niia's forthcoming album is a masterclass in restraint and emotion, a record that fuses acoustic rhythm and subtle electronic color, creating a sound that's timeless without ever feeling nostalgic. We talk about her roots in a deeply musical Italian family outside Boston, her early years studying jazz in New York, and how those experiences shaped her approach to both songwriting and performance. Along the way, she shares what she's learned from being a jingle singer, a perfectionist, and a performer learning to truly connect on stage. It's a conversation about courage, craft, and the beauty of imperfection, and it all leads up to this stunning new album she's about to release. So settle in. Here's my conversation with Niia.
Let's go. Don't stop. Just go. I'm broke. I know. Vape smoke. Just go. So simple. Imagine if it was, I'll never know. Who knows? Throw my head out the window where nobody goes. Throw my head out the window where I'm all alone. Not a care in the world and I'm so beautiful.
Niia, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I've been so excited to sit and chat with you. I have to tell my Niia origin story of how I discovered you. I recently had Matt Starr on the podcast.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I asked him to send me some tracks of some things that he's played on that I could put in the episode, and he sent me the track that he played on your new album.
Yeah, throw my head out the window.
Yeah, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh my, this is fantastic. I have to listen to more of this. And so I've been listening to everything I can of you, and I'm just such a fan. So,
I love that. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
As we're recording this, you are about to embark on a tour, right? So where all are you going, and when does that kick off?
Yeah, I'm heading out. It starts next week. I think my first show is October 2nd and or 3rd. And we're going to parts of Germany. So Frankfurt, Isenburg, Berlin, Copenhagen, just a couple great places. I think there's 10 shows total. So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah, I'm excited to get back out there and keep it moving.
Are you taking a band with you, or what's the lineup?
Yeah, I'm taking a band, an amazing drummer, bass player, and keys player. And I think,
that's great.
Yeah, and I think as we expand, potentially bring in instrumentalists from each city or singers, depending on budgets, of course.
Sure. Touring in 2025 can be a little bit expensive. So,
Very much. And you need great musicians. This album is all about the musicianship. So I really needed to make sure that was accounted for live.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because, and what I love about the album is it's involved. There's some production on it. It's not overproduced. There's some beautiful sonic things happening with it. And I was wondering about how that would be translated to your live show and how you would be accomplishing that with your band.
Yeah, I mean, it's been such a journey coming from live music as my background, being in jazz ensembles, then kind of moving into the mainstream landscape where there's producers building tracks and then adding live things. It's been quite a process of understanding how to, one, fit on produced music, and then also figure out then how to relay it live. And I think as I've gotten more comfortable just in general as an artist and producing and just finding the right people, live is kind of where I feel the safest to start. So this record feels very live, and, it's figuring out what are the most important things to have live, definitely a rhythm section. And what's crazy is because it started live, it sounds the best live. So when we just play it, so it hasn't been as hard as I thought, which is kind of shocking, because usually getting live or recorded music then live can be difficult. But this time it's been pretty painless. So I'm waiting for what's going to happen next.
Yeah, it does have a beautiful balance between electronic elements, but also instruments that actually move air when they're when they're played. So yeah, I love that balance of what happens on the album.
Yeah, I wanted to try to make something timeless. I wasn't ready to kind of make just a throwback jazz album or just straight standards. So it felt important to kind of explore what modern jazz is like from a instrumental standpoint, and then also when you incorporate a traditional jazz vocalist, which is what I'm trained in, but also not exactly my entire vocal style all the time. So
yeah. And I think we're in this beautiful time of experimental jazz. There's so many great artists out there. Donnie McCaslin comes to mind. Are you a big listener of that music? Does it inform your writing?
I think, I tend to always listen to old music for vocal stuff, just because I think sometimes modern recording technology can kind of neuter vocals for me. But there's been a lot of really far out jazz instrumental bands and just some interesting things happening, even in the ambient space with music and classical. So I definitely listen to a bit more avant-garde stuff currently that's modern, and then kind of always listen to Chet Baker or some of the great vocalists,
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mash, but there are incredible experimental jazz things happening right now.
As we were talking before we got on here, we were talking about me now being around my wife's large Italian family. I understand you come from a large Italian family as well.
I do. I thought everyone's family was like mine until I went to a friend's house. I was like, oh, nobody wants to eat anything, and nobody wants to sing songs and scream at each other.
Yeah, like talent shows and just massive charades. It's just every time it's an event. It's amazing.
Yeah. And then we're talking about the next one at the one we're at.
That's exactly right.
What are we having for dinner while we're having lunch?
That's right. That's exactly right. Where did you grow up?
I grew up right outside of Boston. My mom is originally from Italy, and she came over in her early teens from a little town called Bussi. And they grew up in Connecticut, and we kind of ended up right outside of Boston. But huge music, great. Very musical. My mom was my first classical piano teacher.
Yeah, I read some previous interviews of yours talking about you come from quite a musical family, don't you?
Yeah, a lot in the classical or like traditional jazz. A lot of piano players and a bunch of Juilliard opera singers, which I was kind of the dark sheep.
I feel like, and I don't know what this was like for you, because I come from a large musical family as well, and have done music for many years. And I think there was a period of my life, formative years as a musician, where I felt like I rebelled against some of what I was hearing and learning at home or hearing my family do. But then at some point, I kind of moved back toward it again and embraced it. Have you felt that as well?
Yeah, that arc sounds 100% correct to me. I think it's, just the pure shock that everybody is so talented. And once you realize that's not normal, I think then you feel, where's my identity in this? I was always, for Christmas Eve, there were certain songs I'd never sung because my cousin would always sing them. Like it was that serious. I never sang "Oh Holy Night." That was just not my song. And if anybody's like girlfriends came that could sing, they weren't allowed to sing our songs. So it just got, a little competitive. And I was a very shy, introverted child and teen. And it just became a little bit difficult because, when you have a family full of musicians that are a little bitter, you start to learn everyone has an opinion. And I think the one lesson I learned the most, though, from my family is when you think you know everything about music, your career will probably be over. Weldon came back, and now I would love to have a big jam session with them. But
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I feel like I'm in this season of my life, especially doing this podcast, that the older I get and the more I'm around music, the more I realize how little I know about it. It's music is hard. People don't I appreciate that maybe just listen to it. Music is hard. There's a lot involved.
oh yeah, I know. I drive in silence most of the time because I just can't handle it all the time, because I'm trying to listen. So like
Yeah.
active listening.
Yeah, I agree. Did you start on piano and then realize, hey, I can sing, or
Yeah, I
what?
mean, I was so shy growing up that nobody really knew I could sing. And I did classical piano, and then my mom realized I had a really good ear and wanted to play everything but what's on the page. So then she moved me into jazz, and he would have me sing along with the, leads. And he said to my mom once, Nia's a pretty good piano player, but she's a really good singer. I'm going to put her in my jazz band. So it just kind of happened. And yeah, I would sing when my mom would leave with my sister. So like nobody knew for a long time. But yeah, I started piano first because I just loved melody and old Chopin nocturnes. And then it kind of morphed into jazz, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. I watched your TED Talk, and I encourage everyone listening to seek it out and listen to it, because I someone who's performed thousands of gigs over the years, that still to this day, and spent most of my time as a singer,
Mm,
I still sometimes suffer from some crippling stage fright.
yep.
And I think people that listen to music may not understand, but you're choosing to be a performer. How can you be introverted and be up on stage? And I think there's just so much of this that we just kind of have no choice but to do music. So
Yeah.
we're just going to have to deal with all of the crap that goes around, all of the anxiety that goes around. What has that journey been like for you? And where are you with that in your career now?
Yeah. I mean, that's a very great question for me. And it's, it was a really hard journey, to be completely honest. Growing up very shy, not loving attention, very awkward in my body, so to speak. I mean, music was kind of my best friend for a lot of my life. I would skip class and go play the piano in the chapel. And um, I never got into music for the showman part. It was always craft. And I never even thought about, I could do this for my life and career. I went to a jazz conservatory, and thinking back, I was like, well, what was I thinking I was going to do with my life? Just sing gigs or teach. And then when I learned there's a whole nother side of this, like, the showman side, nobody cares you've won jazz vocal awards. They want to know what your show's like. So it took me some readjusting. And also, like you said, it's just part of the job. And I remember a specific show where, I usually sing with my eyes closed because I want to focus and zone out. But I realized during one show, I looked up and the whole crowd was just staring at me. And I remember being like, wow, okay, this is a connection that I'm not engaging in. And it felt almost, like I'm missing out on something. And that connection between me singing music that I love and other people and sharing with that, I realized like isn't as scary as I think it is. And this ego and the worry of accuracy and making sure all the other things are buttoned up. I think people just want to connect with what you're singing about or how they feel. So that kind of dismantled the fear a bit. But yeah, I still struggle. I'm such a perfectionist. But I kind of always lean into, helping others in some capacity. And I feel it's helped me take myself out of the equation and be like, I have to do this because I might help someone tonight or make them have a really fun night. And like
Yeah.
less ego.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful way to approach it. And I applaud you for that. And if I'm being completely transparent, I'm almost a year sober now. And
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. And
I'm
part of
probably tethered to it to some degree now.
yeah, it is. Alcohol was my way of dealing with it,
Mm.
and been away from alcohol now for almost a year. It's been nice to kind of realign my thinking on how I need to approach that as if I'm being in front of an audience,
Definitely. It's a tough job. People don't realize how hard it is. They don't. And I'm grateful I get to do it, but it's definitely taken a lot of time to get here, kicking and screaming with enjoying being, elevated, amplified, looking down at everybody. It's quite intense.
Yeah, I applaud you and I thank you for having the nerve to even be vulnerable about it in front of an audience and say, this is what I've been dealing with, because I think more musicians deal with it than they would like to admit.
Yeah.
And I think you had the guts to actually say it. So I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, I feel like, what else am I good at? Nothing. So it's what I got to do.
Guess I do need you. Help me stop my fast mind. Just say you want me, and you'll do it like that. We'll just touch it, baby. Feel so incredible with you deep inside me. I just wanna melt. Ooh, please, let's fly. I just need to kill my mind. That's good, like that, baby. We can do it right now.
One of the things I learned about you is that you kind of found your way in as a jingle singer in New York. Yeah. What was looking back on that experience? Did you learn a lot about being in the recording studio? And
Oh my
you
gosh,
know,
it was mind blowing. I think, being in a jazz conservatory, that was all theory and, playing with ensembles. And I was very stubborn, shy, but very stubborn, and didn't want to take like a waitress job or do something that I didn't really like. So singing felt like the only thing I was loving. And I learned how to, one, have some mic technique in recording studios, and then be able to communicate with advertising people, which was interesting because it's basically the same language, but they'd be like, we don't hear you smiling about the pasta sauce. And I'd be like, okay, what are they trying to say to me? I'm like, oh, my tone needs to be brighter, or, my articulation should go up. Like, so it was an interesting kind of study on, another way of transcribing vocals. So it was really fun. And I got to do I got to do like a Subway commercial. I got to sing, it's just funny, a children's hospital commercial. But it was great practice, and it ended up leading me into the actual music industry, just
right.
right time. So, but it was fun singing about pasta.
Well, and the other piece of it too, that you've learned even more as you've been recording and releasing your own material, is that time is money in the studio. And if you're dealing with, as you're dealing with a client that is paying by the hour for studio time, they need that track cut as quickly as possible. So
Totally. I always
yeah,
say at weddings are really tough for me because it's the first time a lot of the people have used microphones. The family gets up and speaks, and it's always just like, nobody knows where to hold the mic. And I'm just dying inside because I'm like, oh,
I'm with you.
everybody should have 101 mic technique.
Yeah, I completely agree. It should be like mandatory in high school or something. That it drives me bonkers to see
Because
people with a
there's
microphone.
life timelines in our whole lives, we all have mics at some point. It's like,
Yeah.
it's my
Or
question.
you have the person that holds the microphone like 2 feet away, and then everyone's like, well, we can't hear them. Like, well, of course you can't, because
I know.
the mic's nowhere near them.
Or they put the mic, on the shirt, and the wind is just like they're in Hawaii, and it's like, it's just, anyway, yes, mic technique is really important. And I loved singing about Subway sandwiches. It was fun.
It's a good takeaway from that.
Yes.
I appreciate that. When did you relocate from New York to LA? What
I
period?
was in New York. I went to new school, the jazz program, and dropped out because I was in New York. And then kind of got introduced to the music industry while I was still in New York. And then maybe in my early 20s, the LA world, there were more producers and writers and record labels out there. So I said, I'll go for 6 months, packed up my apartment, went to New York, LA, and never came back. So I've been here now maybe 11 years, which is
Oh, that's
crazy.
great.
Yeah. But it was a huge transition, just kind of more industry type stuff. And, suddenly there was like a pomegranate tree outside my house. So I was kind of like, how am I supposed to write my brooding songs? But, it was just everything is so beautiful here and gorgeous. So I really struggled with the transition of how do I be an artist in LA and,
Yeah.
happy, not like masochistic, glamorizing the tortured songwriter journey.
Sure. How is the scene, how would you compare the music scenes, like the live music scenes between New York and LA? Because I imagine it has quite a
It's
difference.
different. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
LA is on the upswing with some live stuff. And there's always secret things you can find, but I would say New York has a way bigger, better live music scene to some degree. LA, you're driving a lot too, so everything feels very separated and, there's a bunch of shows, but I don't really know many people that go to them all the time. So I'm hoping LA will continue to evolve that side. And I feel like it really is. They just opened a Blue Note in LA and
Oh, cool.
there's a couple great jam sessions that people find. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I'm reading the Chet Baker biography and they talk so much about West Coast jazz versus New York jazz back in the day. And I didn't realize it was such a rival and also just like so different what West Coast jazz versus New York jazz was and how they kind of like the Montagues and the Capulets like each other.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I mean, even down to like drum sounds being different between East Coast and West Coast. There's so much difference, and I don't know, it's identity. I don't know if it's an intentional thing to say, hey, we're who we are and we're going to put our fingerprint on it, but it's incredible to me to hear the difference between those two cities.
Definitely. They talk so much about that in this book, which I'm just fascinated by because it's like, the New Yorkers think they have more grit and actually go through hard times. And the West Coast guys are all at the beach smoking weed, surfing, and then they, go play their trumpets. So it's very interesting to see their reasoning of why the sounds are different.
Yeah, it's really funny. Well, I will tell you, so I've been lucky enough to listen to your new album from beginning to end, and I can't get enough of it. It is so good.
Thank you.
And yeah, and so it's releasing, I think, October 10th, and I'm so excited I know there have been a few songs that have been released so far, and I just love to talk with you about just the project, the recording process of it, the writing process of it. One of the things that strikes me about it is that I feel like it covers so much musical territory. I'm not a big fan of genre, the labels of genres.
Me neither.
And I feel like it covers so much territory while you're still like the central character in the middle of it, which I love. It's like everything is kind of moving around you while you're still the focal point of it.
Definitely.
Was it a conscious thing? What when you started writing for this album, what did you set out to do sonically?
Yeah, I think that's the real question. I think setting out to try to find what my version or where I'm at as a jazz artist to some degree, and I had studied all these other genres, made more R&B, indie folk, ambient. And, at the end of the day, I kind of wanted to figure out what I wanted to do and how to sound. And it was really challenging, to be honest, of figuring out how do you sing over music without overpowering everything, and I love traditional vocal jazz albums, but it feels very contained and too much where you follow the singer. So I wanted to find a place where there's this environment that can move and change and go in and out of different genres while still kind of keeping me as the centerpiece, like you said, but then also have moments where I am secondary and the band can really shine. But it was challenging because a lot of it is choice notes and instrumentalists and the players you pick, because I'm always drawn to kind of the melancholy, more emotionally melodic choices versus sometimes maybe the more traditional or like power ballad or ragtimey stride piano stuff. So it just became choices, and a little trial and error of putting the right people in the rooms. And I would come to them with little bits of songs, or I'd just be like, hey, I want this song to feel like this. And we'd all kind of jam. But it's hard to map it out. And I didn't really go in with like any concept for the album. I just was like, I want to make like a modern day jazz record that doesn't feel like it's from the past, but doesn't feel like it's from the present either. So somewhere in the future, but reminds you of the past.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I know exactly what you're saying. And I do think it's a delicate balance of honoring what came before you, embracing where we are, but still trying to push it in your direction at the same time. And it can be tough sometimes to figure that balance out.
Totally. There were moments where I was like, I don't know if this can work, where you can have a vocalist and, a cool out jazz record or any, we're calling it jazz, but, experimental in all these ways. But it was challenging. And I realized maybe that is why vocalists, their music sounds a certain way, and more instrumentalist groups get away with having more fun stuff on their stuff. I was like, there's got to be a bridge between the two.
Yeah. Well, you certainly achieved it. I'm just so impressed by what you and the musicians accomplished on it. So you worked with co-producers on this.
Yeah, I did. I worked with two great producers. They were awesome, helpful. Very helpful.
Yeah, so Spencer Zahn and Lawrence Rothman. How did that relationship happen with them?
Lawrence I had known for a very long time, and he had helped me on one song in my last album I was stumped with. And he has been saying, Niia, make your jazz record. What are you doing? Just make your friggin'. So he was the one that kind of planted the seed. And he himself is an incredible artist, songwriter, producer. He can kind of do everything. Our entry points are a little different, though. He loves more Americana, old soul, blues. So we kind of put our whole worlds together, and he pulled some musicians in, and then we kind of worked on the songwriting together. And I just love to collaborate. I think, like we said earlier, when I feel like I know everything there is to know, I'll fail. So he brought his own kind of flavor, and that meshed well for a bit. And then I realized there was like something kind of missing, and me and Spencer had made a song, and I showed Lawrence. He's like, there's something here. So we then did it again with some other players, and then kind of collided the two worlds and made this kind of whole thing. Yeah. But Spencer Zahn is an incredible instrumentalist and producer, kind of in the jazz avant-garde and then ambient landscape. And then I have Lawrence, who's an incredible singer-songwriter and kind of a bit more of like an old school soul. So it kind of had this perfect pairing of everything that I feel, like an old soul, but still fresh, a little haunting. So it was great. I'm very grateful that I got to work with them both, and everybody kind of liked each other.
Yeah. And
that's a big deal. That's hard.
It is absolutely. It is a big deal. And more people you add to the mix, the more potential there can be for creative differences.
Yeah. And this almost has the credits of like a hip hop album, because there's a lot of players and people, moving parts.
If you see me at a coyote with your drink, leave me alone, 'cause these days I'm fucking happy. I deserve this, yeah, I earned it. And I don't know how long this streak will last, so don't fuck with me. Took years to finally smile without blood in my mouth. Yeah, I'm biting down. I know why you're afraid of you. Don't live in my mind anymore. And I know why you're afraid of you. Don't live in my mind. So don't fuck with me. Yeah, don't fuck with me. If you see me on a flight to Italy, keep my peace at all costs. Social climbing low key, I'm none of your business no more. Already had a war. I know what you're afraid of. You don't live in my mind anymore. And I know what you're afraid of. You don't live in my mind. So don't fuck with me, begging you please stay away from me. You broke me into a million pieces.
Now that you've had some time away from that recording process and now the album's about to release, where do you think you've grown as an artist having recorded this album? Because I know there's always growth that comes from projects, especially when you're digging in and really spending a lot of time with the same material. Where do you feel like you've matured and grown as an artist?
I think where I've really matured is in my producer hat to a degree, and a bit of a songwriter, I'd say. You know, when me and Lawrence did our first batch of songs, I knew something was kind of missing. I loved the songs so much, but there was something that I had an instinct that there's something else I need to keep going. And that instinct, I think, is growth for me, to just know there's something more I need to get out before making this final decision. So it's just kind of like trusting my instincts more and realizing, like, I think I do know what I want. And, you know, however long it takes, I will do it. And then just songwriting, you know, some of these songs I started years ago and just kind of, they slept on a folder. And I think just kind of working them to a place where they felt really good and arranging them and having input on that, which I usually kind of tend to always feel a bit insecure when I have better instrumentalists in the room, and I'll take my cues from them because I just want to learn and absorb. But this is my record, so it has to feel true to me, even just like the way you voice a chord. I prefer this way versus that way. So I think it just was me kind of owning a little bit more of my opinions to a degree. And that can be hard, but I needed to get to the end to see if it was exactly what I heard in my head. And it was pretty close. So
Yeah.
I think that's what happened. Sorry.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think there's an interesting through line here from what we were talking about earlier about overcoming and embracing the stage fright part of it. I think there's this self-confidence. I think we can call it confidence, but I also think it's just trusting yourself, trusting your instincts, trusting your abilities. And I think I would deduce that you're in a place now where you're like, yeah, I think I know what I'm doing now. So I think you're trusting yourself more.
Yeah. And it feels nice. It's scary, but because there's nobody to blame but you. But at least, you know, when the ship goes down, it was like the ship I picked, and I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't want to just completely gush over it the whole time we're on here, but yeah, I'm really, you know, it's like sometimes I'll do interviews and I'll do my homework listening to an album, and I'll tell you, I've been listening to it just as a music listener.
Oh, that makes me happy.
Yeah,
it's definitely active listening. It's a little exhausting in moments, and you know, it's funny because so many people are like, "Oh, I love your music so much. I love to put it on, you know, when I have dinner parties." And I'm like, "Oh, that's nice." I mean, and I get that the fireplace metaphor where it's like easy listening. You know, I love Sade, but I was like, I want to make something a little bit more active listening.
Oh yeah,
that can be a bit more energizing and almost like, okay, please turn that off. It's intense in moments. So
yeah, it's not wallpaper to me. It's like you have to focus in on what's happening, because there's, in a good way, there's a lot going on. You know, totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I know in the previous album there was a theme to that. Are there themes to this album, or is it?
I mean, I think what happens is, no matter how I try, there's always themes with my stuff. You know, I think I'm such a visual, dramatic Italian lady that there just happens to always be some drama or some subliminal symbols that somehow just creep in. And, love is always a huge theme for me, or heartbreak. And I think just because growing up singing these sad standards when I was like, 13 to however old, these are some heavy lyrics, and I had to really learn how to express those emotions. My jazz teachers, I remember, would like throw bottles at me and smoke, being like, I don't feel it. This man left her. I got to feel the sadness. So I just remember having to invoke all this emotion. And I think that's carried with me through everything. So just kind of this sadness, melancholy, but I think as I've gotten older, this kind of like sarcasm of like hysteria has happened a bit, where there's a bit of humor and darkness that can be cheeky. That I wanted to play with a bit, with finding kind of like the dark, edgy, not sinister, but a little bit more bite, mixed with kind of the soft, melancholy, lullaby type dream stuff, And then Maria Callas is one of my favorite women in the world. She's such an icon. And I just, and then there's Ronnie Camilleri, a reference to my favorite movie, Moonstruck.
I was going to ask about that. Yes. The Nicolas Cage. Yes.
Yeah. Just, I think it's important to kind of, when you're climbing a wall, when you put your little markers in. So it's like people I love, things that help me kind of create this world for people to live in. And that kind of just happens sometimes intentionally, and other times it just happens. And with this record, it kind of just happened,
Yeah. Well, and as you're talking about that, kind of cheeky, dark humor to it, I think the opening track of it kind of sets the tone of that. It kind of has this balance of vulnerability and attitude, and what was the conscious decision to put that album as the first track to kind of set the tone for here's what's to come?
I think it just didn't work anywhere else. I think when we tried track listing it, it just felt difficult to put it anywhere else. What comes before it, what comes after. So it just felt right to be kind of the starter.
Yeah.
And give a bit of, okay, you're going to get some energy and some raw feelings happening.
Yeah. So I am a singing bass player. So I'm a bass player.
Incredible.
Yeah. And I think you do, because I noticed there's a lot of fretless bass on your albums, which I love. And on your previous album, I Don't Know What to Tell My Friends, has such a beautiful fretless bass part on it as well. And it's reminiscent of the Jaco Pastorius, Joni Mitchell, that relationship. Have you listened to a lot of that? Because I hear that. I don't want to say that informed this, but there's a little bit of that kind of trickling in.
Yeah, I mean, I think also I moved to Laurel Canyon and became, a bit more entranced with the folk world. And I always loved singer-songwriter music. I grew up listening to James Taylor, so Joni Mitchell was always in our ether. I just think sometimes that genre of female vocalists I can't really identify with because their voices are so different than mine, but I love learning from them because their phrasing, their timing, just even the way they sound like blows my mind. And I think, Jonathan Wilson is who I worked on with my last album, who works with Angel Olsen, Father John Misty. He himself is one of my favorite artists. And that was kind of me really digging into that kind of folk element and what I can pull and bring from it. And Joni Mitchell and, bass is always, it's my favorite instrument in the world.
It's bass. I always tell everyone it's two things about bass guitar. Number one, bass players don't exist until they're bad. If there's a bad bass player in a band, it immediately.
It's very
And I think bass players typically are people that are like to be in the background but have control issues. So that's I'll at least say that about myself.
Nailed it. That is every bass player I know. It's interesting because like drums, you need drums to keep time. You need the other things, but like the bass is all the feel. It's the groove. It's everything. It makes the song like you really need bass. And I feel like the bass players I know that.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, they're the I've heard them called the designated driver of the band, right? They can really hold it together, and they allow everyone else to do what they need to do in the track. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
singing with it. I think my voice works well with bass. So it was great. And Spencer's an amazing bass player. So oof.
Yeah, I hadn't listened to him playing as a bass player until this album, and I was completely knocked out with his playing.
Yeah, it's really special.
Yeah, how was the tracking done on this? Was a lot of it, because I know a lot of sessions, it can be a one at a time type tracking thing. Were a lot of things tracked together, or
A lot of things were tracked together, and then all the music was predominantly tracked together, unless there's like maybe some horn stuff on top and pads and things. And the majority of the vocals were redone after, just because we kind of move things around, and I'm a very slow burn with the writing. I kind of have to live with it, try some stuff, and then it eventually reveals itself, and I kind of will take it and then like hide out for a month or two and hoard everything and just write to it and then reemerge ready to retrack. But something like Angel Eyes, that was maybe our second take we just did off the floor.
I was about to ask you about that track. First of all, I love that song, and 100 years from now, people will still be talking about that song. It's going to stand the test of time. So there's a reason why everyone is still singing it. What personally drew you to that song, and where did you have a inner thing to strike the balance between honoring the standard and kind of reinventing it for you?
Yeah, I mean that's the goal, and so many of my favorite artists, Ella, Frank Sinatra, everyone sung it, and I've been drawn to that song. I think because it's so haunting, and I could not get over the fact that it was the last song Frank Sinatra sang live. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the last line he ever sang out loud was "Excuse me while I disappear." So I was just like blown.
Yeah.
And it just he was such an entertainer, and that song is all about basically being, hiding in plain sight. So it just kind of felt like this melancholy way to connect with these artists that love what they do but have a bit of a sadness that they carry, and just the melody is so gorgeous. And we did it two ways. We did one with the full band and one with just me and piano. And unanimously, everybody preferred just vocals and piano for it.
Pardon me that I gotta run. The facts uncommonly clear. Got to find who's now number one. Why my angel eyes ain't here. Excuse me while I disappear. Angel eyes, angel eyes.
And not every singer can hang with just a solo piano. So that's a testament to your singing ability.
Yeah.
And I've watched lots of live video of you singing, and you sing really in tune. So thank you for that.
I thought that was a requirement, but I guess
you know what? Me too.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's software out there now that can kind of help people with the inability to sing in tune. So I imagine that it makes the post-production on your album probably not as difficult as others, that there probably didn't have to be a lot of tuning done. So thank you for that.
Yes. We try not to tune. It just kind of ruins some things. And I will be like, oh, that sounds flat. And they're like, no, but it's cool.
Yeah.
You kind of learn. It's cool.
Yeah. No, I think that the beauty sometimes happens in the imperfections on those parts. And just, it doesn't need to be tuned to death, or
Yeah.
it doesn't. The imperfections of it is, to me, is what makes it perfect. So yeah, I love how I love how everything breathes. It's not compressed to death as a lot of new albums seem to be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The sonic part of it's amazing.
Yeah, and that's also, we worked with John Castello, who does a bunch of pop records. He does like a lot of Billie Eilish, and for some reason, people kept suggesting him to mix this record, and I was like, "Are you sure?" He's more in the urban pop world, but I walked into his studio and he has a big Bill Evans poster.
Oh, there you
I
go.
was just like, okay, great. I think we're in the right spot. And he really enjoyed mixing this record because it wasn't, straight pop. And he had to really play with how to mix this where it still felt alive, but also can compete with recorded music, which is something that's important to me too. So it was great to see it come alive even more in the mix, because that's an area that I struggle with, of kind of understanding or just knowing what it should feel or sound like. So
yeah, I think that there's so much software and so many plugins at everyone's disposal now that there's a tendency to just want to throw the kitchen sink at every track.
yeah.
And I would imagine that an engineer or a mastering engineer or whatever, wherever they are in the process of it, it's probably nice to be able to just push the faders up and down and not really have to worry about all of those other external pieces of it.
Totally. He didn't do much, he just kind of did what it needed, he said. And I was like, are you sure? So
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it. Yeah. What was the process, and you spoke about it a little bit earlier, about deciding when to lean into the electronic piece versus the acoustic piece on the way these songs were produced?
Yeah, I think I'm such an organic, piano was the first thing I bought when I first moved to New York. Piano was the first thing I bought in LA. But I feel that I'm drawn to this electronic world. I love what Thundercat's doing, Flying Lotus. There's all these really cool artists kind of incorporating things, and even just in the ambient space, some of these scores, even the Daft Punk Tron score, I remember just being blown away.
I agree.
Niels Holm and all those artists are just so incredible with how they do it. And I feel that it was important to try to use those elements like synths or whatever the hell is all over my album, and just kind of explore how to incorporate them as colors and just kind of little, I don't know, just ways to enhance what's there.
Yeah.
Where you can't really be like, oh, that's a Prophet 6. Like you can identify, but not really know exactly, because that dates things to me. Sometimes electronic music, it's like, oh, that sounds so 2024. Is that synth everyone was using? Yeah,
it can absolutely be a snapshot or a time capsule of that era, of saying that was the, I'm older than you, but the DX7 days, and it's like, holy hell, that's so dated sounding. And it's like, it's like watching a movie from 1990 with bad CGI, where it's like you can't get past
totally
the piece of that. It kind of removes you from the experience a little bit if the sounds are so dated sounding.
Totally. And I think that also it distracts versus pulls you in, and I really trusted Lawrence and Spencer and just all the musicians. They really had restraint. And that's when you really learn, these are top-notch players. And that's what you learn in jazz. You learn everything, and then it's all about silence and restraint and what notes you play, but also what notes you don't play. So, and that, as cliche as that sounds, that's really the rule of anything: restraint and arrangement.
No, I agree. And I think that, for everything we complain about this streaming world of, not being able to go out and buy physical albums, and, there is something to be said about this music that's being created now by people that have had access to basically anything that they want to hear anytime they want it.
Yeah.
I think everything is being so much more informed at a macro level, that influence is trickling in to every kind of music that's being made. And I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it just creates more interesting music, you know. And
Yeah.
people can express themselves in ways that I was like, what is, I can't even understand this. And that's why I need to hear it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree. So, as we were saying, you're about to embark on a tour, and this wonderful album is about to release in a few weeks. And I know it's really early for me to ask this question, so forgive me to ask it.
No.
But so, what's next? What are you looking on the horizon to do after you kind of get to work on, put this one away?
Yeah, I think I'm going to see my mother and then probably start all up again. I think,
Yeah.
maybe take a little break. I'm kind of interested in working on some writing a little bit, maybe do a book of poems or something like that, which could be fun to just kind of exercise. But I kind of need to absorb. Usually it happens where it's, I need some time to kind of live and explore. But I definitely think that this album is just the beginning of this new world for me, and kind of I'm curious to see like what chapter 2 will sound like, if it ends up being more aggressive or more subdued, and eventually, The Hill I Do Want to Die On is an album of standards, like in a Chet Baker, like a big, beautiful orchestral, just something like that. So I think I'm not ready to die yet. And that's not because I think that's like a dead art. I just think it's the most beautiful. I'm not ready to do my standards album all the way. So I think I have more Niia influence to get me there.
Yeah. Well, and because I would imagine as a lover of that music and as a singer of that music that interprets that material like you do, you probably think, I don't know where I would want to go after that. I mean, where would I go after that?
Totally. That's exactly what it is. And I think because I was so young studying it, when you're like a naive, curious child, you're just so much more open and engaged. And I think you kind of go back to that state when you get older. So I think I'll have even more knowledge on how to, express some of the best songs ever written, And yeah, there's nowhere to, am I going to do an album of my own songs after singing Stella by Starlight? Probably not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. Well, Niia, I have just absolutely had a great time talking with you.
Oh,
And
likewise.
yeah, and a big thanks to Matt Starr for playing on your album so he could be on my podcast so I could learn about you.
Matt Starr, that was a tough, we had 2 drummers and he came in, didn't even know the song and just nailed it. Insane.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, he's a great player, and I love what he brought to that track, and I just love. I'm telling you, I'm such a fan of this album, and I can't wait for everyone to get to hear all of it because it's incredible.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely, and best of luck on your tour. By the way, let me ask you this before we go: So after you do this tour, are you expanding and performing in other areas after that?
I hope so. I think we'll go hopefully to Asia and then to the US. So hopefully we get to your town.
Oh, yes. And even if you don't, I will travel to the nearest city to hear you.
Amazing.
So yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, best of luck to you and just thanks for the music.
Thank you.
That was Niia, an artist who continues to redefine what modern jazz can sound like. Her new album drops October 10th, and it's one you'll want to listen to front to back. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen. It really helps others discover the show. You can follow along on social media at The Bandwidth Tapes for clips, updates, and behind-the-scenes stories from upcoming guests. Thanks as always for tuning in, and until next time, keep listening, keep creating, and keep celebrating the stories behind the music.